I watched Mitchell crying on the floor of the empty nursery, clutching the ultrasound photo. It was a moving performance, truly Academy Award worthy. If I had not already spoken to the real estate agent who sold our house behind my back this morning, I might have comforted him. I might have knelt down and rubbed his back and told him we would get through this together. Instead, I handed him a tissue and prepared to ruin his life. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I stood at the checkout counter of the organic market, the one Mitchell insisted we use because the produce at the regular store was apparently covered in poison. The conveyor belt hummed with a low vibration that I felt in my fingertips as I drummed them against the metal edge. The cashier, a teenager with neon green headphones around his neck, stared at me with a look of utter boredom that bordered on hostility. I swiped my card. The machine made a harsh, low buzzing sound. Declined. My stomach did a small, uncomfortable flip. I smiled at the boy, a tight, apologetic stretching of my lips that did not reach my eyes. I told him to try it again. It must be the chip. The chip was always finicky. I remembered scratching it against my keys last week. That had to be it. He sighed, a long exhale that ruffled his bangs, and pressed the button again. I inserted the card, shoving it in with a bit more force than necessary, praying to the banking gods. The buzz sounded again, louder this time, or maybe it just felt louder in the silence of the store. I looked at the total on the screen. It was $42.15. We were not poor. Mitchell was a senior partner at a logistics firm. We had a savings account that we jokingly called the Freedom Fund. We had credit limits that could buy a small sedan. There was absolutely no reason for a $40 charge to be declined unless the bank's fraud detection system had gone haywire. I felt the heat rising up my neck, a prickly, suffocating sensation. The woman behind me cleared her throat. It was a sharp, impatient sound that said, "Hurry up better than words ever could." I told the cashier I would use a different card. My hands were shaking slightly as I dug through my purse. I found the backup card, the one we kept for emergencies, and slid it into the machine. Declined. The word flashed in red letters on the small screen, mocking me. I stared at it. I could not understand what I was seeing. My brain tried to process the data, but it kept hitting a wall. 2 cards, 2 different banks, both rejected. I told the boy I would pay cash. I fumbled for my wallet, opening the billfold. Empty. I remembered giving my last 20 to the gardener yesterday. I looked at the groceries. The kale, the almond milk, the expensive free-range eggs Mitchell loved. I felt a sudden, irrational urge to scream. Instead, I whispered that I was sorry. I told him to put it back. I walked out of the store with my head down, feeling the eyes of the woman in line burning into my back. I got into my car and sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing heart. It was a glitch. It had to be a glitch. Banks had system errors all the time. I would go home, call the customer service line, and we would laugh about this over dinner. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach where my intuition lived, I knew it was not a glitch. The silence in the car felt heavy, pressing in on me. I started the engine, and the sound of the motor seemed aggressive, like a growl. I needed to get home. The house was cool and quiet when I entered. Mitchell was in the living room, sitting on the beige sectional with his laptop balanced on his knees. He looked up as I walked in, his smile easy and practiced. He asked if I got the eggs. I dropped my purse on the counter with a thud. I told him what happened. I told him about the card, the second card, the humiliation in front of the teenager with the green headphones. My voice was rising, trembling with the residual adrenaline of the embarrassment. Mitchell did not look alarmed. He did not jump up and grab his phone to call the bank. He just chuckled, a soft, condescending sound that made my teeth clench. He closed his laptop slowly and patted the cushion beside him. He told me to come sit down. He said I looked frantic. I stayed by the counter. I asked him why the cards were declined. I asked him if he forgot to transfer the funds for the bills. He looked at me with that expression he reserved for children and golden retrievers. He said he did not forget anything. He asked me if I remembered buying that treadmill last month, the one I swore I would use but was currently acting as a very expensive clothes hanger in the guest room. I told him the treadmill was $2,000. We had a limit of $20,000. The math did not work. Mitchell sighed and stood up, walking over to me. He placed his hands on my shoulders, his thumbs rubbing circles into my tense muscles. He told me I had been stress shopping a lot lately. He said he noticed packages arriving every other day. He said he did not want to say anything because he knew I was having a hard time with the fertility treatments, but maybe I lost track. I pulled away from him. I told him I did not lose track. I tracked every penny. I managed the household budget. I knew exactly what was coming in and going out. He tilted his head, his eyes full of a terrifyingly fake pity. He told me that the hormones were making me foggy. He said Dr. Evans warned us about this. He said I was getting worked up over nothing. He probably just froze the cards as a precaution because of the high volume of transactions. He said he was doing it to help me, to help us. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was wearing the cashmere sweater I bought him for his birthday. He looked so reasonable, so calm. For a second I faltered. I thought back to the last week. Had I bought more than I thought? The vitamins, the books, the new curtains? No, that was hundreds, not thousands. I told him I wanted to see the statements. He kissed my forehead. He told me not to worry about it. He said he would handle it. He said I should go take a bath and relax. He said I looked like I was about to snap, and stress was bad for the baby we were trying to make. He walked back to the couch and opened his laptop, effectively dismissing me. I stood there for a moment, watching him type. He was so confident, so unbothered. It made me feel crazy. I turned and walked toward the stairs, my legs feeling heavy. I would take a bath, but I would not relax. I waited until I heard the shower running in the master bathroom. Mitchell always took 20-minute showers, scalding hot, scrubbing himself with a loofah until his skin was pink. I had 20 minutes. I went into the guest room and pulled my laptop out from under the bed where I kept it. I did not want to use the family computer downstairs. I wanted privacy. I wanted to prove to myself that I was not losing my mind. I opened the browser and typed in the bank's web address. My fingers flew across the keys. I knew the username and password by heart. It was a combination of our first street name and the year we met. I typed the word Willow, followed by the year 2015. I hit enter. The screen refreshed. A red box appeared at the top. Invalid username or password. I stared at it. I must have typed it wrong. My hands were shaking again. I took a breath and typed it again, slower this time, announcing each letter in my head. WILLOW, enter. Invalid username or password. Panic flared in my chest, hot and sharp. I tried the backup password, the one we used for the utility bills. Invalid. I tried his birthday. Invalid. I clicked the link that said forgot password. It asked for the last 4 digits of the Social Security number associated with the account. I typed in mine. System error, user not found. I typed in Mitchell's. The screen changed. It asked where to send the verification code. I expected to see his cell phone number or our joint email address. Instead, the screen showed a masked email address that I did not recognize. It started with the letter C and ended in a provider I had never seen us use. I sat back, the laptop burning my thighs. He had changed the login. He had changed the recovery email. He had locked me out. This was not a precaution against my stress shopping. This was a blockade. I heard the water turn off in the other room. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it back under the bed. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stood up and smoothed my shirt, trying to compose my face. I needed to go downstairs. I needed to act normal. But my mind was racing. Why would he lock me out? What was he hiding in there? I needed air. The house felt like it was shrinking, the walls inching closer together with every breath I took. I grabbed a trash bag from the kitchen, filled it with empty boxes from the recycling bin just to have an excuse, and walked out the back door. The evening air was cool, smelling of damp earth and jasmine. I walked to the curb and shoved the bag into the bin. I stood there for a moment, gripping the plastic handle of the bin, looking at our house. It looked perfect. The manicured lawn, the fresh paint, the warm yellow light spilling from the windows. It was a lie, a beautiful, expensive lie. I heard a shuffle behind me. I turned to see Mrs. Gable, our next-door neighbor, standing by the hedge that separated our properties. She was wearing a floral housecoat and holding a pair of garden shears, though it was nearly dark. Mrs. Gable was widely considered the neighborhood eccentric. She talked to her hydrangeas and was convinced the mailman was a government spy. Mitchell always rolled his eyes when she waved at us. She squinted at me. She asked if the blonde woman was gone. I froze. I asked her what she meant. She took a step closer, the shears clicking in her hand. She said the blonde woman, the one with the fancy car. She said she saw her here yesterday around noon. She said the woman used a key to get in. My blood ran cold. I told her that was impossible. I was at work yesterday at noon. Mitchell was at his office. No one has a key except us and my mother, who lives 3 states away and has dark hair. Mrs. Gable shrugged. She said she knew what she saw. She said the woman walked right up to the front door, unlocked it, and went inside. She stayed for an hour. She said she thought maybe we hired a cleaning lady, but this woman was dressed too nice. She was wearing a white suit. I felt a wave of nausea. A white suit. I thanked Mrs. Gable, my voice sounding hollow and distant. I told her I would check with Mitchell. Maybe it was a real estate agent valuing the house? The lie slipped out before I could stop it. Mrs. Gable nodded, seemingly satisfied. She told me to be careful. She said people were sneaking around everywhere these days. I walked back to the house, my legs feeling like lead. A blonde woman, with a key, while I was at work. I looked at the front door. The lock looked normal, but someone else had access. Someone Mitchell knew. I walked back into the kitchen, my mind reeling with images of a faceless blonde woman touching my things, sitting on my couch. Mitchell was standing by the island pouring 2 glasses of wine. He looked up and smiled, a genuine, warm smile that almost made me doubt Mrs. Gable. Almost. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He slid it across the marble counter toward me. He said he was sorry for earlier. He said he hated fighting with me. He said he wanted to make it up to me. I looked at the box. It was navy blue with gold trim. I knew the brand. It was not cheap. I opened it slowly. Inside was a tennis bracelet, diamonds glittering under the kitchen track lighting. It must have cost $5,000, maybe more. I looked at him. I asked him how he paid for this, if my card was declined for $40 of groceries. He laughed. He said he has his own separate account for gifts. Silly. He said he did not want me to see the charge and ruin the surprise. He came around the counter and picked up the bracelet, clasping it around my wrist. The metal felt cold against my skin. He kissed my neck. He whispered that I deserved nice things. He said he was working so hard for us to build our future. I looked down at the diamonds. They felt heavy, like shackles. This was a distraction. It was a shiny object meant to dazzle me, so I would stop asking questions about the bank account. I forced myself to smile. I told him it was beautiful. I told him thank you. He hugged me, pulling me tight against his chest. I could smell his cologne, the cedar and spice scent I used to love. Now it smelled like deception. I rested my chin on his shoulder and stared at the dark window. If he had money for diamonds, the accounts were not frozen. The money was there. He just moved it somewhere I could not reach. He pulled back and handed me a glass of wine. He proposed a toast to us, to our growing family. I clinked my glass against his. The sound was sharp and clear. I took a sip. The wine tasted sour. I realized then that I was not drinking with my husband. I was drinking with an enemy who knew my every weakness. I waited until Mitchell left for work the next morning. I watched his car disappear down the street, then I threw on a hoodie and jeans and drove straight to the main branch of our bank. I did not go to the one near our house where the tellers knew us and might mention my visit to him. I drove 20 minutes to the branch in the city center. I walked up to the counter. The teller was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Her name tag read Susan. I handed her my driver's license and asked for a balance inquiry on our joint checking and savings accounts. I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands were trembling on the granite counter. Susan typed on her keyboard. Click, click, click. The sound was agonizingly slow. She squinted at the screen, then frowned. She asked me to verify my social security number. I gave it to her. She typed some more. She took off her glasses and looked at me. She asked if I was aware of the transfers made on Monday. I shook my head. I told her I was not aware. I asked her how much was in the account. She turned the monitor slightly so I could see, though the glare obscured half the screen. She pointed to the bottom line. 0. Not a single cent. I felt the blood drain from my face. I asked where it went. She scrolled up. She said it was a wire transfer. The entire balance of the savings and 90% of the checking. It was sent to an offshore holding company called Janus LLC. I asked who authorized it. She said Mitchell did. He came into the branch on Monday morning. He signed the paperwork in person. I felt like the floor was tilting. Monday. I was at the fertility clinic on Monday getting blood drawn. He told me he was in a strategy meeting. I asked about the credit cards. Susan clicked another tab. She said the primary card was reported lost and a new one was issued. To a different address, a post office box in the next town over. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from falling. He had stripped me. He had taken everything. The Freedom Fund, the emergency cash, the credit. I was standing there with a diamond bracelet on my wrist and $0 to my name. Susan looked at me with pity. She asked if I wanted to speak to a manager. I shook my head. I could not speak. If I opened my mouth, I would scream and I would never stop. I grabbed my license and walked out of the bank. The sun was shining. People were walking their dogs and drinking coffee. The world looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but my life had completely disintegrated. I got into my car and locked the doors. I sat there staring at the dashboard. Janus LLC. Janus was the two-faced god, the god of beginnings and endings. Mitchell had not just stolen our money, he had ended us. And he had started something else, something with a blonde woman in a white suit. I looked at the bracelet on my wrist. I unclasped it and held it in my palm. It sparkled in the sunlight. I realized with a sick clarity that he probably bought it with the last of my money before he transferred the rest away. I sat in the driver's seat of my SUV, the engine idling, staring at the piece of paper Susan the teller had printed for me. It was a single sheet, warm from the printer, but it felt like a death warrant. I read the line over and over again. Wire transfer. Recipient Janus LLC. Amount $240,000. I folded the paper until it was a tiny, sharp square and shoved it into the bottom of my purse, underneath the wrappers and loose change. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely close the zipper. I thought about calling him. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to drive to his office, kick open the glass doors, and demand to know who Janus was, but I stopped. If I confronted him now, he would lie. He would say it was a tax shelter. He would say it was a surprise investment for our retirement. He would say I was hysterical, just like he did yesterday. And because he had moved the money, he held all the cards. If I spooked him, he could disappear. He could take that money and vanish to a country with no extradition treaty, leaving me with a mortgage I could not pay and a baby I could not afford to have. I put the car in reverse. I forced myself to breathe in, out. I needed to be smarter than him. I needed to be the woman he fell in love with, the one who organized his life and managed his schedule. I needed to be methodical. I pulled out of the parking lot and merged into traffic. Every car looked like a threat. Every person walking on the sidewalk looked like they knew my secret. I felt exposed, raw. I turned on the radio to drown out the silence, but the voices of the talk show hosts sounded like gibberish. I turned it off. I needed to know what Janus LLC was. But I could not search for it on my phone or the home network. He monitored everything. I knew that now. The blocked bank login proved it. I had to go to the library. I drove to the public library 3 towns over, a place where no one would recognize me. I walked in, keeping my head down, and found a computer terminal in the back corner. I sat down and typed the name into the state business registry. Janus LLC. The screen loaded painfully slowly. I watched the little circle spin, my heart thumping against my ribs. Finally, the results popped up. It was a shell company, registered 3 weeks ago. Agent of service, a lawyer in a city 2 hours away. There were no other names listed. No Mitchell, no blonde woman, just a lawyer and a P.O. box. I felt a wave of frustration hot enough to make my eyes water. It was a dead end. But it confirmed one thing. This was premeditated. You do not open a shell company 3 weeks ago for a sudden market shift. He had been planning this for a month. Maybe longer. I drove home on autopilot. I did not remember stopping at red lights or using my turn signal. My brain was a chaotic loop of memories, replaying the last month, searching for the red flags I had missed. I remembered the night he came home late, smelling of antiseptic. He said he visited his sick aunt. I believed him. Now I wondered if he was with her, the blonde woman. I remembered the way he started locking his phone. He said it was a new company policy for security. I believed him. I pulled into the driveway. The house loomed over me. It used to feel like a sanctuary. Now it felt like a stage set. I walked up the front steps, avoiding the loose brick on the 3rd step out of habit. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was deafening. I walked into the kitchen and put my purse on the counter. I looked at the granite island, the stainless steel appliances, the expensive espresso machine we bought in Italy. Everything in this room was technically stolen. If he had drained the accounts, he wasn't paying the mortgage. How long until the bank took the house? How long until the lights went out? I walked to the refrigerator and opened it. It was full of food, expensive cheeses, organic vegetables. It was a tableau of a happy, wealthy life. I grabbed a jar of olives and threw it into the trash can. Then I grabbed the milk, the yogurt. I started clearing the shelves, throwing things away with a manic energy. I did not want his food. I did not want his lies. I stopped when I heard the garage door opening, the rumble of the motor. Panic seized me. He was home early. I looked at the trash can full of perfectly good food. I looked at my flushed face in the reflection of the oven door. I looked crazy. I took a deep breath. I grabbed a trash bag and tied it up quickly, hiding the evidence of my breakdown. I smoothed my hair. I forced a smile onto my face. It felt tight and brittle, like a mask that might crack. The door opened. Mitchell walked in. He was wearing his navy suit, the one that made him look powerful and trustworthy. He was carrying his briefcase and a bouquet of flowers. Lilies, my favorite. I wanted to vomit. Dinner was a torture session. I had roasted a chicken, relying on muscle memory to season and carve it, while my mind was screaming. Mitchell sat across from me, looking relaxed, loosening his tie. He poured wine into my glass. He asked how my day was. I picked up my fork and stabbed a piece of potato. I told him it was fine. Quiet. I told him I did some reading. He smiled. That same benevolent, condescending smile. He asked if I was reading pregnancy books again. He told me not to obsess. He said it would happen when it happened. I chewed the potato. It tasted like sawdust. I swallowed hard. I looked him in the eye and decided to poke the bear. I asked him how the market was doing. I said I heard on the news that there was some volatility. Mitchell didn't even blink. He took a sip of wine and nodded gravely. He said it was a little choppy. He said that was why he was moving some assets around, to protect us. He said he wanted to make sure our liquidity was safe. Liquidity? That was the word he used, as if he hadn't liquidated our entire life. I asked him if he moved anything from our main accounts. I tried to sound casual, like a wife bored by financial talk. I said I wanted to write a check for the charity gala next week and wanted to make sure there was enough in the checking account. He paused, just for a fraction of a second. His fork hovered halfway to his mouth. Then he smiled again. He told me to hold off on the check. He said he moved most of the cash into a high-yield bond for a few days to capture some interest. He said the checking account was a little low right now, but he would transfer it back by Friday. A high-yield bond, another lie. It was in Janus LLC. I forced a laugh. I told him he was such a wizard with money. I told him I trusted him completely. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. His palm was warm. I thought about the days when that touch made me feel safe. Now, it made my skin crawl. He told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. He said he was doing it all for me. I pulled my hand back, pretending to reach for the salt. I told him the chicken needed more seasoning. I couldn't let him touch me for another second. The next morning, Mitchell was packing a suitcase. He said he had to go to Chicago for 2 days. A client crisis. He needed to be there in person to put out the fire. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him fold his shirts. He was meticulous. He used tissue paper to prevent wrinkles. He packed his toiletries in a leather kit. I asked him which flight he was taking. He zipped the suitcase shut. He said he wasn't flying. He said he was driving. He said he needed the time in the car to make calls and think. Driving to Chicago. That was 6 hours away. I walked him to the garage. He kissed me on the cheek, a dry, perfunctory peck. He told me to take care of myself. He told me to buy something nice with the credit card. He didn't know I knew the card was dead. He was taunting me, or maybe he just forgot which lie he told. I watched him back out of the driveway. He waved. I waved back. As soon as his car turned the corner, I ran into the garage. I needed to verify something. Mitchell kept a mileage log in the glove compartment for tax write-offs. He was obsessive about it, but I couldn't get to the log because he took the car. Then I remembered the spare key fobs. We had a hook by the door where we kept the spares. I grabbed the fob for his car. It was gone. He had taken the spare key. Why would he take the spare key to his own car, unless he wasn't taking his car? I looked at the garage floor. There was a small oil stain where his sedan usually parked. I looked at the empty space. I realized I had not actually seen him drive away in his car. I saw him back out a vehicle. I ran to the driveway. I looked at the tire tracks and the light dusting of pollen on the asphalt. They were wide, wider than his sedan. He had taken the SUV, my car. Wait, no. My SUV was parked on the street. I ran back inside and grabbed the iPad we used to control the home automation. I pulled up the garage security camera footage from 5 minutes ago. I watched the video. Mitchell walked out with his suitcase. But he didn't walk to his car. He walked to the third bay of the garage, the one we used for storage, the one where we kept the lawnmower and the old boxes. He opened the side door of the garage. He backed out a silver convertible, a Mercedes. I had never seen that car in my life. He had a secret car, stored in our own garage, hidden behind a wall of boxes I never moved. I stared at the screen. He wasn't going to Chicago. You don't drive a convertible to Chicago for business. He was going somewhere else, and he had been keeping a $60,000 car hidden 20 feet from where I slept. He was gone. I had 48 hours. I locked the front door and engaged the deadbolt. I turned on all the lights. I felt like a detective at a crime scene. I needed evidence, real evidence. Not just a lack of money, but something that proved his intent. I started in his home office. It was a masculine room with dark wood paneling and leather furniture. I went to his desk. I opened the drawers. Pens, paper clips, a stapler, nothing. I checked the trash can. Empty. He was too smart to leave receipts. I pulled the books off the shelves. I shook them, hoping a note or a card would fall out. Nothing. I felt along the back of the drawers for taped envelopes. Nothing. I moved to the closet. I went through his pockets, suit jackets, trousers. I found a stick of gum and a dry cleaning ticket. I checked the ticket. It was for a white dress. I stared at the ticket. It was dated 2 weeks ago. I don't own a white dress. I pocketed the ticket. It was something, but it wasn't enough. I went back to the desk. I sat in his chair. I tried to think like him. Mitchell was paranoid. He didn't trust the cloud. He didn't trust banks. He trusted physical things, hard assets. I looked at the floor. It was a Persian rug. I rolled it back, hardwood. I tapped the boards, solid. I looked at the heavy oak filing cabinet in the corner. It was locked. I didn't have the key. I grabbed a letter opener from the desk and tried to jimmy the lock. The metal bent and snapped. I cursed. I pulled the cabinet away from the wall. It was heavy, scraping against the floor. I looked behind it. There, taped to the back of the cabinet near the bottom, was a small silver key. It was tiny, too small for a door, too small for a car. I peeled the tape off. The key was cold in my hand. It looked like a luggage key or maybe a diary key. I pushed the cabinet back. I had the key. Now I needed to find the lock. I searched the house for an hour, trying the key in everything. I tried the jewelry box. I tried the fireproof safe in the basement. I tried the old antique desk in the hallway. Nothing worked. I sat on the floor of the bedroom, exhausted and sweaty. I was holding the key, turning it over and over. Where would he hide something small? I looked at the master closet. It was a walk-in, filled with his suits and my dresses. I walked in. I pushed aside his winter coats, the ones he hadn't worn since our trip to Aspen 2 years ago. In the back corner of the closet, on the high shelf, there was a shoebox, a box for hiking boots he bought 5 years ago. I pulled the box down. It felt heavy, heavier than empty boots. I opened the lid. Inside was a black metal cash box, the kind you use for a garage sale. My heart hammered in my ears. I inserted the small silver key into the lock. It slid in perfectly. I turned it. Click. I lifted the lid. I expected to see cash, stacks of $100 bills, passports, but the box was mostly empty. There was no money. In the center of the box, resting on the metal bottom, was a smartphone. It was an older model, black with a cracked screen. I picked it up. I pressed the power button. Nothing happened. The screen remained black. I pressed it again, holding it down. A red battery icon flashed on the screen for a second, then disappeared. Dead. I looked around the box. There was no charger. I ran to my nightstand and grabbed my charger. The plug was different. This phone was an Android. I had an iPhone. I scrambled downstairs to the junk drawer in the kitchen. I dug through the tangled mess of cables, old USB cords, camera connectors, headphones. I found a micro USB cable. I ran back upstairs. I plugged the phone in. The screen lit up. A battery icon appeared with a lightning bolt. 0%. I sat on the floor staring at the phone. This was it. This was his secret life. It wasn't in a file or a bank statement. It was in this device. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. The screen flickered. It turned on. The logo appeared. And then a lock screen. Enter PIN. 4 digits. I stared at the keypad. I had thousands of combinations, and if I guessed wrong too many times, it might wipe the data. I didn't have the code, but I had the phone, and that was a start. I sat cross-legged on the floor of the closet, surrounded by the smell of Mitchell's cedar shoe trees and the faint stale scent of his sweat on the hiking boots. The phone lay on the carpet in front of me, tethered to the wall by the white cord. I watched the screen. It was dark, lifeless. I pressed the home button again. The battery icon appeared. 5%. It was charging, but it felt agonizingly slow. Each percentage point took an eternity. I stared at the device, my mind racing through scenarios. What if there was nothing on it? What if he just bought a second phone for work and forgot to tell me? What if I was the crazy one, sitting in a closet, spying on my husband because of a banking error? No. You do not hide a work phone in a lockbox inside a boot box. You do not hide a Mercedes in the garage. This phone was a weapon, and I was waiting for it to load its ammunition. I felt a wave of physical sickness wash over me. I wanted to unplug it and throw it against the wall. I wanted to smash it until it was just plastic and glass shards. If I destroyed it, I would never know. I could go back to pretending. I could pretend the money was in a bond. I could pretend the marriage was real. But the money was gone. And if I didn't find out where it went, I would be destitute. The screen lit up. 10%. I took a deep breath. I reached out and touched the glass. It was cool and smooth. My fingerprint left a smudge on the dark surface. I wiped it away with my sleeve. I needed to be ready. I needed to see what he was hiding, no matter how much it was going to hurt. The phone powered on fully. The Android logo danced across the screen, mocking me with its cheerful animation. Then the lock screen appeared. It was a generic background, blue swirls. No photo of us, no photo of the dog, just factory settings. Enter PIN. I stared at the 4 empty circles. I tried his birthday. October 4th, 1004. The phone vibrated in my hand. Incorrect PIN. I tried our anniversary. June 12th, 0612. Vibrate. Incorrect PIN. I felt a surge of panic. Of course he wouldn't use a date I knew. That was rule number 1 of keeping secrets. I tried the last 4 digits of his social security number. Vibrate. Incorrect PIN. Try again in 30 seconds. I stared at the timer counting down. 30 seconds felt like 30 years. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms. I thought about the numbers that mattered to him. His high school football jersey number, the year he graduated college, the price of the first stock he ever bought. The timer hit 0. I typed in the street number of his childhood home, 3421. Vibrate. Incorrect PIN. I tried the year his father died, 2018. Vibrate. Incorrect PIN. Try again in 5 minutes. I let out a strangled cry of frustration and dropped the phone onto the carpet. I was locked out. I was holding the evidence in my hand and I couldn't access it. It was a brick, a useless, taunting brick. I realized then how little I actually knew him. We had been married for 6 years. I thought I knew every corner of his mind, but I didn't know the 4 numbers that unlocked his real life. He was a stranger, and strangers don't share passcodes. I left the phone plugged in, hidden under a pile of sweaters in the back of the closet, and went downstairs. I needed water. I needed to stop shaking. Just as I reached the kitchen, there was a knock at the back door. Not the front door, but the kitchen door that led to the patio. I froze. I looked through the glass. It was Mrs. Gable again. She was wearing a trench coat over her house dress, clutching a tablet against her chest like a shield. She looked urgent. I opened the door. The air was heavy with impending rain. Mrs. Gable didn't say hello. She stepped inside uninvited, her eyes darting around the kitchen as if checking for listeners. She told me she found something. She said she went through her archives. I asked her what she meant. She placed the tablet on the kitchen island. She said her nephew installed a new security system for her last month. It recorded everything that moved on the street. She said she usually deleted the footage, but she had a feeling. She tapped the screen with a knobby finger. A video player opened. The timestamp was from Tuesday 3 days ago, 11 in the morning. I watched the grainy footage. A silver convertible pulled up to the curb in front of my house. The top was down. Mitchell was driving. I recognized his profile immediately. He was wearing sunglasses. A woman was in the passenger seat, blonde hair blowing in the wind. She was laughing. I could see her head thrown back. Mrs. Gable pointed at the screen. She told me to watch closely. In the video, Mitchell leaned over. The woman leaned in. They kissed. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It was a long, lingering kiss. His hand went to the back of her neck. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Seeing it was different than suspecting it. It was visceral. It made my stomach turn. Mrs. Gable swiped to the next video. The woman was getting out of the car. She was wearing the white suit Mrs. Gable had described. She walked around the car and Mitchell slapped her on the rear end. Playfully, possessively. I looked away. I couldn't watch anymore. Mrs. Gable patted my hand. Her skin was dry and papery. She said she thought I should know. She said men were dogs. She said she could email me the files if I wanted them for my lawyer. I looked at her. This woman, who I had dismissed as a neighborhood nuisance, was handing me the ammunition I needed. I nodded. I told her yes. Send everything. Mrs. Gable left, and I sat alone in the kitchen with the image of the blonde woman burned into my retinas. I knew her. The face was grainy in the video, but the posture, the hair, the way she threw her head back, I had seen it before. I closed my eyes and replayed the last office Christmas party, the one at the downtown hotel. Mitchell had introduced me to his team. There was the VP of sales, the new logistics coordinator, and the intern, Cassandra. She was young, fresh out of college. She had worn a red dress that was slightly too short for a corporate event. I remembered Mitchell making a joke about her being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I remembered her laughing at his jokes, touching his arm when he spoke. I had dismissed it. I thought she was just eager to please the boss. I thought he was just being a mentor. I thought I was secure enough not to be jealous of a 22-year-old with bad perfume. I was a fool. I pulled out my own phone and opened Instagram. I searched for her name, Cassandra. I didn't know her last name. I went to Mitchell's company page. I scrolled through the Meet the Team photos. There she was, Cassandra Miller, junior analyst. I clicked on her tagged photos. Her profile was public. I scrolled down, selfies, food pictures, and then a photo from 3 days ago. It was a picture of a hand holding a mimosa against a blurred background, but I recognized the background. It was the dashboard of a Mercedes, a silver Mercedes. The caption read, "New beginnings with my favorite person. Blessed some future." I stared at the hashtag, future. She wasn't a fling, she wasn't a mistake, she was the plan. She was Janus. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, replacing the panic. He was building a future with a child who used hashtags to describe adultery. He was stealing my life to fund hers. The sound of a car door slamming shattered my concentration. I looked out the window. My SUV was in the driveway. Mitchell was home. I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 2 p.m. He wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow night. Panic, sharp and electric, shot through my veins. The burner phone. It was plugged in upstairs in the closet. If he went into the closet to change his shoes, he would see the cord. He would see the light. I heard the key in the front door lock. I kicked off my shoes so I could run silently. I sprinted up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. I heard the front door open downstairs. "Lorelei," his voice echoed in the foyer. "I forgot my golf clubs." He was coming for the clubs. They were in the garage. But if he came upstairs to use the bathroom, I reached the bedroom. I dove into the closet. I ripped the cord from the wall. I grabbed the phone and the charger. Where to hide it? I couldn't put it back in the box. Too slow. Under the mattress? Too cliché. I looked around frantically. My eyes landed on the hamper. It was full of dirty towels. I shoved the phone and the charger to the very bottom of the hamper, burying them under a week's worth of laundry. I stood up and smoothed my hair. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he would hear it from downstairs. I walked out of the closet and into the bedroom just as I heard his footsteps on the stairs. "Lorelei," he called out again. I walked to the landing. I forced my voice to be steady. "I'm up here." "You scared me." He appeared at the top of the stairs. He looked harried. His tie was crooked. He looked at me, then at the bedroom door. "Why are you out of breath?" I leaned against the railing, trying to look casual. "I was doing yoga." "What are you doing here?" "I thought you were in Chicago." He blinked. I turned around. The meeting got canceled. rescheduled to Zoom, and I realized I forgot my clubs for the charity tournament tomorrow. He was lying. The charity tournament wasn't until next week. I knew because I organized his calendar. I smiled. Oh, that's annoying. He walked past me into the bedroom. He went straight to the closet. My breath hitched. He walked in. I heard him rummaging around. He came out a moment later holding a windbreaker, not his clubs. "It's chilly," he said. "Thought I'd grab this, too." He didn't look at the hamper. He didn't look at the boot box. I exhaled, a slow, silent release of air. Okay. "Well, dinner isn't planned since I thought you were gone." "No worries," he said, already heading back down the stairs. "I'll pick something up. I have to go to the office to take that call." He was running. He was frantic. He hadn't come for clubs or a jacket. He had come to check something, or maybe he just needed an excuse to be away from Cassandra for an hour. Mitchell didn't leave immediately. He stood in the foyer checking his watch, tapping his foot. He looked like a man whose timeline was collapsing. I walked down the stairs slowly. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "You seem stressed." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's just work. The merger is complicated." He looked at me, his eyes shifting away. "Actually, Lorelei, we need to talk about cash flow." I froze on the bottom step. "Cash flow?" "Yeah," he said. "The market dip hit us harder than I thought. The bond transfer is stuck in clearing. It might be a few weeks before we have access to the main funds." He was setting the stage. He was preparing me for the empty accounts. "Okay," I said carefully. "So what do we do?" "I'm thinking of selling the rental property," he said. "The one on Oak Street. I got a cash offer today. It's a little low, but it would give us a bridge until the bond clears." I stared at him. The rental property on Oak Street was the only asset solely in his name. It was an inheritance from his grandmother. If he sold it, that money was his. And if he was asking for a bridge, it meant he needed more cash than he had already stolen. Janus needed feeding. "But the market is terrible right now," I said, channeling the logic of the woman I used to be. "Why would you sell a generating asset for a lowball cash offer?" he snapped. "Because I know what I'm doing, Lorelei. I'm trying to save us from a liquidity crisis." His voice echoed in the hallway. It was the first time he had raised his voice at me in years. I recoiled, feigning fear. "Okay, I'm sorry. I trust you." He softened instantly. The mask slid back into place. "I know. I'm sorry, babe. It's just stress. Look, I'm going to accept the offer. It's for the best. We'll have the cash in hand by Friday." Friday. 2 days away. "Okay," I whispered. "Do what you have to do." He kissed my forehead. "I'll see you later. Don't wait up." He walked out the door. I locked it behind him. He was liquidating the last asset. He was cashing out. If he got that money on Friday, he would be gone by Saturday. I had 48 hours to stop him, and I still didn't have the passcode to the phone. I stood in the foyer, staring at the door Mitchell had just closed. The silence of the house felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I replayed his words in my head. He was selling the Oak Street property. He said it was for liquidity. He said it was a bridge. My mind started doing the math, frantic and sharp. The Oak Street house was worth maybe $200,000. The bank accounts he drained held nearly $250,000. That was close to $500,000. Was that enough to start a new life? Yes. Was it enough for Mitchell? No. Mitchell had expensive taste. He liked first-class flights and bespoke suits. He liked the Mercedes he was hiding in the garage. $500,000 was a safety net, not a kingdom. If he was running, really running, he would want more. He would want everything. I turned and looked at the living room. The high ceilings, the crown molding, the view of the park. This house was our biggest asset. It was worth 3 times what the rental was. A cold chill went through me. If he was willing to forge my signature on a bank transfer, what stopped him from forging it on a deed? I ran to the filing cabinet in the study. I needed to see the title insurance policy. I needed to see the mortgage statements. I yanked the drawer open. The file was there. I flipped it open. It was empty. The manila folder was there, labeled House Title in Mitchell's neat handwriting, but the papers were gone. He wasn't just selling the rental. He was selling the ground beneath my feet, and he was doing it right now while I stood here worrying about a credit card bill. I needed to know the timeline. I needed to know exactly when the hammer was going to drop. I needed to get into that phone. I ran back upstairs to the bedroom. I dug the phone and the charger out of the laundry hamper. It smelled like damp towels and deceit. I plugged it back in behind the nightstand, hiding it behind the heavy oak frame. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled up Instagram on my own phone again. I went back to Cassandra's profile. I needed a number, a date, something that mattered to her, because Mitchell was clearly obsessed with her. I scrolled through her posts, selfies, parties, a picture of a latte. Then I found it. A post from last year. She was wearing a tiara and holding a balloon. The caption read, "Finally legal, 21." The date on the post was August 15th. August 15th, 8:15. I looked at the burner phone. The screen was locked. I had one attempt left before a 5-minute lockout. If I failed, I would have to wait, and I didn't have time to wait. My finger hovered over the glass. Mitchell was simple. He was predictable in his selfishness. If he was starting a new life with her, her birthday was the new anniversary. I typed 8, 1, 5. I hesitated on the last digit. Should I add the year? No, it was a 4-digit PIN. I looked at the date again. August 15th, 0815. I typed 0, 8, 1, 5. The screen froze for a heart-stopping second. Then it unlocked. The home screen appeared. It was a picture of them. Mitchell and Cassandra on a boat, wearing swimsuits. He looked younger, happier. He looked like the man I married 5 years ago, but he was holding someone else. I didn't cry. I didn't have the luxury of tears. I tapped the green message icon. The message app opened. There was only one conversation thread. It was labeled simply C. I scrolled to the bottom, to the most recent messages. I read a text from her sent this morning. She asked if he had left yet. She said she was worried. I read his reply. He told her to relax. He said the cow was being difficult, but he handled it. The cow. He called me the cow. I felt a flash of heat, a physical blow to my chest. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and kept reading. I scrolled up to last week. There was a picture sent by her. It was a white plastic stick with 2 pink lines. My hand flew to my mouth. Underneath the picture, she wrote that they did it. She used a baby bottle emoji. I read Mitchell's response. He wrote that it was a miracle. He said he was so happy he could cry. He said this was his second chance to get it right. I dropped the phone on the bed. The room spun. We had been trying for 3 years. We had spent tens of thousands of dollars on doctors, injections, and tests. Mitchell had held my hand while I cried over negative results. He had told me it didn't matter, that we were enough. And all the while, he was celebrating a pregnancy with a 22-year-old intern. He wasn't leaving because he was bored. He wasn't leaving because of the money. He was leaving because he was replacing me. He had a new wife, a new baby, and he was stealing my money to pay for their nursery. I picked the phone back up. I needed to screenshot this. I needed to send it to myself. But the phone had no service, no SIM card. It was Wi-Fi only. I frantically went to the settings. I tried to connect to our home Wi-Fi. Password required. I typed in our home password. Connected. I went back to the messages. I selected the photo of the pregnancy test. I hit share. I emailed it to my secret email account, the one I used for junk mail. Sent. I had the proof of the affair. I had the proof of the motive, but I still didn't have the money. I drove to the law office of a woman Mrs. Gable recommended. Her name was Evelyn, and her office was in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a vape shop. It didn't look impressive, but Mrs. Gable said she was a shark. I sat in the vinyl chair across from Evelyn's messy desk. I showed her the printed screenshots of the texts. I showed her the bank receipt with the zero balance. Evelyn put on her glasses and read the papers in silence. She hummed a low, skeptical sound. She took off her glasses and looked at me. She told me she believed me. She said it was a classic dissipation of assets. I asked her if we could freeze the accounts. I asked if we could stop him from selling the house. Evelyn sighed. She told me that without a filed divorce petition, she couldn't get an emergency injunction. She said we could file today, but a judge wouldn't see it until Monday at the earliest. It was Wednesday afternoon. I told her Monday was too late. He was getting the cash on Friday. He would be gone by the weekend. Evelyn leaned forward. She told me that unless I could prove he was committing a crime, like forgery or tax fraud, the police wouldn't touch it. It was a civil matter. She said husbands were allowed to be jerks. They were even allowed to be bad with money. I felt the hope draining out of me. The legal system was too slow. It was built for people who played by the rules. Mitchell wasn't playing by the rules. Evelyn tapped the paper with the texts. She said this proved he was a cheater. It would help in the long run for alimony, but it wouldn't stop him from getting on a plane on Saturday. She told me I needed something concrete, a contract, a forged signature, something that proved illegal intent right now. I left her office feeling heavier than when I went in. The law couldn't save me. I had to save myself. I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was setting. I was exhausted. My head was pounding. As soon as I walked through the door, I heard it, a hissing sound coming from the kitchen. I ran in. Water was spraying from the pipe under the sink, shooting a steady stream onto the hardwood floor. A puddle was already spreading toward the living room rug. I grabbed a towel and threw it over the pipe, trying to deflect the spray. I fumbled for the shut-off valve, but it was stuck. It wouldn't turn. I called Mitchell. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, babe," he said. "Everything okay?" I screamed that the pipe burst. I told him the kitchen was flooding. I told him I couldn't turn the water off. "Whoa, calm down," he said. His voice was maddeningly soothed. "It's just water. Put a bucket under it." I told him a bucket wouldn't fix it. I told him we needed a plumber. I told him to call the emergency line. "Lorelei," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "We don't need to spend money on a plumber right now. It's an old house. Things break. Just mop it up and I'll look at it when I get home tonight. Look at it as a chance to deep clean the floor." I stared at the phone. He didn't care. He didn't care if the house rotted. He didn't care if the floor warped. Why would he? He was selling it. It was someone else's problem. "You want me to deep clean the floor while it's flooding?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage. "You're so capable," he said. "You always figure it out. That's what I love about you. You're a survivor. Just handle it, okay? I have to jump on a call." He hung up. I stood there. Water, soaking my socks. Toxic positivity. He was reframing his neglect as a compliment to my strength. I threw the phone on the counter. I went to the garage and found a wrench. I crawled under the sink, water spraying in my face, mixing with the tears I finally let fall. I wrenched the valve shut with a primal grunt. The hissing stopped. I sat on the wet floor, shivering. He wasn't coming to help. He was never coming to help again. Mitchell came home at 9 o'clock. He walked into the kitchen, stepped over the damp towels I had laid out, and didn't even comment on the mess. He looked right through it. He kissed my cheek. He said he was exhausted. He said he was going to take a shower. I waited until I heard the water running upstairs. This was it. He had carried his briefcase into the house. He usually left it in the car, but tonight he brought it in. I walked to the hallway table where he had dropped it. It was a brown leather satchel worn at the edges. I tried the latch. It wasn't locked. I opened it. Inside were his laptop, a few chargers, and a blue folder. I opened the blue folder. My heart stopped. It wasn't a deed for the rental property, it was a purchase and sale agreement. I scanned the document. The address at the top was our address, 742 Maple Drive. The buyer was an LLC I didn't recognize. Quick Cash Homes. I looked at the price. $600,000, that was $200,000 under market value. He was fire selling our home to a flipper for quick cash. And then I saw it. At the bottom of the page, my signature. It was my name, written in blue ink. But the loop on the L was wrong. The slant was too sharp. He had forged my signature. I looked at the date next to the signature. Today's date. He had signed it today. The closing was scheduled for Friday morning. This was the smoking gun. This was the crime Evelyn needed. I pulled my phone out and took a picture of the document. Then I took a picture of the signature close up. I heard the water turn off upstairs. I shoved the papers back into the folder. I closed the briefcase. I stood there, trembling. I had the proof. But I realized something terrifying. If I called the police now, they would arrest him. But the money he had already stolen, the bank accounts, the credit cards, might still be hidden. If he went to jail, he might never give it up. I didn't just want justice. I wanted my life back. I wanted my money back. I needed to let the sale happen. I needed him to think he had won. And then, at the moment he reached for the prize, I needed to take it all. I did not go to the police station. I went to the address listed on the purchase and sale agreement for Quick Cash Homes. It was a small, dusty office above a pawn shop on the bad side of town. The sign on the door was taped up with clear packing tape. I walked in. A man in a cheap suit was sitting behind a desk, chewing on a toothpick. He looked up, annoyed. I walked straight to his desk and slammed the blue folder down. I opened it to the signature page. I told him my name was Lorelei and that I was the owner of the house on Maple Drive. I told him I did not sign this document. The man laughed. He said the deal was done. He said the wire was scheduled for tomorrow morning. He told me to take it up with my husband. I leaned in. I told him that I had already spoken to the fraud division of the state attorney general's office. That was a lie. But I said it with the conviction of a woman who had nothing left to lose. I told him that if he wired $600,000 to a shell company based on a forged signature, he would be an accessory to grand larceny and wire fraud. I told him he would lose his license, his business, and his freedom. The toothpick stopped moving. He looked at the signature. He looked at me. He saw the cold, hard rage in my eyes. He asked what I wanted him to do. I told him to go to the closing tomorrow. I told him to smile and shake Mitchell's hand. I told him to accept the deed. But I told him, do not wire the money. I told him to bring a copy of the voided check to my house at 7 o'clock tomorrow night for the party Mitchell was throwing. And I told him if he didn't, I would burn his entire operation to the ground. Friday came. Mitchell left the house at 8 in the morning, whistling. He was wearing his best suit. He thought he was going to collect a fortune. I spent the day preparing. I didn't cook. I ordered catering from the most expensive Italian restaurant in the city and charged it to the credit card I knew would be declined, then gave them the petty cash I had found in Mitchell's sock drawer to cover the deposit. Mitchell came home at noon. He was vibrating with energy. He grabbed me and spun me around. He said it was done. He said the deal closed. He said the money would be in the account by Monday due to bank processing times. But we were rich. He didn't know the money wasn't coming. He didn't know the buyer had frozen the transaction. He told me he invited his boss and a few partners for drinks tonight. He said he wanted to celebrate his banner year. I smiled. I told him that was a wonderful idea. I told him I had a surprise for him too. A slideshow of our life together to celebrate our future. He kissed me. He said I was the perfect wife. He said he would go change. I watched him walk upstairs. He was so arrogant. He thought he had outsmarted everyone. He thought I was just the furniture in his life, easily moved and easily sold. The guests arrived at 7. Mitchell's boss, a heavy-set man named Arthur, was the first to arrive. He congratulated Mitchell on his strategic liquidity moves. Mitchell beamed, pouring scotch from a crystal decanter. I moved through the room in my black dress, playing the hostess. I refilled drinks. I laughed at jokes I didn't hear. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it. It was the man from Quick Cash Homes. He looked uncomfortable in a polo shirt. Mitchell looked confused. He walked over. He asked what the buyer was doing here. I stepped in between them. I hooked my arm through Mitchell's. I told the room that this was the man who made our new future possible. I invited him in. Mitchell looked nervous, but he couldn't cause a scene in front of Arthur. He forced a smile and shook the man's hand. I clapped my hands for attention. The room went quiet. I stood by the large flat-screen television mounted above the fireplace. I held the remote in my hand. My palms were sweating, but my voice was steady. I thanked everyone for coming. I said that Mitchell had been working so hard on a secret project. I said that tonight we wanted to share the truth with all of them. Mitchell raised his glass. He looked proud. He thought I was going to show pictures of the rental property sale. I pointed the remote at the screen. I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. The first image was not a house. It was the ultrasound, the black and white, grainy image of a fetus. The room went silent. Arthur lowered his glass. Mitchell's smile froze. He looked confused. He thought maybe I was announcing a pregnancy. He started to step forward, a look of fake joy forming on his face. Then I clicked the next slide. It was the screenshot of the text message thread, the text from Cassandra. "We did it. Baby bottle emoji." The text from Mitchell. "The cow is being difficult, but I handled it." A gasp went through the room. I heard Mrs. Gable, who had invited herself, whisper a prayer. Mitchell stopped moving. His face went pale, then red. He looked at Arthur. He looked at me. I clicked the next slide. It was the photo of the purchase and sale agreement, the one with my forged signature. I clicked again. A close-up of the signature side by side with my real signature from our marriage license. I spoke into the silence. I said that Mitchell had sold our home yesterday without my consent. I said he forged my name. I said he was planning to take the money and run away with his pregnant intern, Cassandra Miller. I looked at Arthur. I told him that Mitchell had also been using company funds to pay for the market research trips that were actually weekends at the beach with her. That was a guess, but Arthur's face turned purple, so I knew I had hit a nerve. Mitchell lunged. He didn't try to explain. He didn't try to apologize. He dropped the glass of scotch and launched himself at me, reaching for the remote. "Turn it off," he screamed. His voice was a guttural roar. "You crazy B-word, turn it off!" He grabbed my wrist. His grip was bruising. He twisted my arm, trying to force the remote from my hand. I didn't let go. I looked him in the eye. I saw the fear behind the rage. He was a cornered animal. "It's over, Mitchell," I said. "Everyone knows." Arthur stepped forward. He grabbed Mitchell by the shoulder and hauled him back. "Get your hands off her," Arthur growled. Mitchell spun around, wild-eyed. "She's lying. She's mentally unstable. That's a deep fake. I never wrote those texts." He pointed at the buyer from Quick Cash Homes. Tell them it was a legitimate sale." The buyer took a sip of his drink. He shook his head. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He held it up. It was a voided check. "I didn't send the wire, Mitch," the buyer said. "Your wife came to see me. She told me everything." Mitchell looked at the check. He looked at the screen. The reality crashed down on him. The money was gone. The house was gone. The job was gone. He started to laugh. It was a high, manic sound. "You think you won?" He spat at me. "You think you're smart? You're nothing without me. You're a barren, useless—" He didn't get to finish the sentence. The front door opened. I hadn't locked it. 2 police officers walked in. Behind them was Mrs. Gable, looking triumphant. "That's him," Mrs. Gable said, pointing a finger like a weapon. "The one who stole his wife's house." The officers approached Mitchell. They didn't ask him to come quietly. They grabbed his arms and spun him around. "Mitchell Davis," the taller officer said, "you are under arrest for forgery, wire fraud, and grand larceny." Mitchell struggled. He screamed that it was a mistake. He screamed that I set him up. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, begging me to stop it. "Lorelei, tell them," he shouted as they clicked the handcuffs on his wrists. "Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I can fix this. Baby, please." I stood by the fireplace. I smoothed my dress. I looked at the man who had slept in my bed for 6 years, the man who had called me a cow, the man who had tried to leave me with nothing. I didn't say a word. I just watched. They dragged him out the door. The flashing blue lights of the cruiser washed over the living room, illuminating the ultrasound photo still frozen on the screen. Arthur walked over to me. He looked shaken. He told me he was sorry. He said the company would cooperate fully with the investigation. He said he would make sure the forensic accountants found every penny Mitchell had stolen. I nodded. I was exhausted. My wrist throbbed where Mitchell had grabbed me. The guests filtered out, whispering, leaving their half-finished drinks on my coasters. I was alone. The house was quiet. The pipe in the kitchen was still fixed with duct tape. The bank account was still empty, but the monster was gone. I walked to the coffee table and picked up the glass of scotch Mitchell had dropped. It was empty. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of tap water, and drank it. It tasted like victory. Update. 3 months later. The divorce is not final yet, but the settlement is looking good. Arthur kept his word. The company's forensic team found the offshore accounts. It turns out Mitchell had been skimming from the firm for years, not just from me. He is currently awaiting trial in a federal holding facility. His bail was denied because of the flight risk I proved with the texts. I kept the house. The judge voided the sale agreement immediately. I sold the engagement ring and the diamond tennis bracelet to pay for a real plumber to fix the kitchen. As for Cassandra, she showed up at my door 2 weeks after the arrest. She was crying. She said Mitchell had lied to her too. She said he told her I was abusive. She asked if I could help her with money for the baby. I looked at her. She was young, scared, and pregnant by a man who was going to prison for a decade. I didn't hate her anymore. I just pitied her. I gave her the number for a women's shelter and a box of diapers I had bought when we were trying to conceive. Then I closed the door. I changed the locks the day he was arrested. But today, I did something else. I went to the bank and opened a new account, just in my name. I deposited my first paycheck from my new job. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I am not the cow. I am not the barren woman. I am Lorelei. And for the first time in a long time, the balance in my life is positive. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.